Part 53. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mocnu. Chapter 521. Accompanied by a low sound of footsteps, a tall and burly figure passed through the corridor in the iron fence and appeared in front of everyone. This human man was nearly 2 meters tall and extremely burly, which was in sharp contrast to the previous human slaves who died tragically. Miu immediately saw the energy fluctuations contained in this person's body. It was obvious that this human man was an awakened person with supernatural powers. And when this human man appeared on the stage, the atmosphere on the scene once again ushered in a new climax. The onlookers began to shout loudly, and it can be seen that this human man is very popular in the Colosseum. The host standing on the high platform began to introduce. Now standing on our left is the cruel butcher dog who has killed people 100 times in total. And standing on the right is the human who has won 10 games in a row and never lost, the iron-armed human slave. This is the final round of today's game. Which side will win the final victory and win the right to survive today? Please wait and see. The host is an orc with a face like an ape, wearing a pair of sunglasses on his head. It seems that he is also proficient in soul-related abilities. His voice carries an inspiring power. As his voice falls, the expressions of the audience in the audience become more and more excited. Place your bets quickly, I must win today. Do you still need to think about this? With such a big difference in size, it must be that the evil dog won. The various strange-shaped alien races around were like a hornet's nest that exploded, talking and making noise. Then the staff of the Colosseum began to shout around and asked everyone to take turns to place bets. The huge vicious dog monster in the field stared straight at the sturdy man not far in front of it, with greed in its eyes. The few humans just now were not enough to fill its stomach. The human man in front of it had already made it salivate and hungry. But it did not dare to act rashly before receiving the order, and its red pupils had already carried a trace of murderous intent. On the other hand, the human man who was bound by iron chains all over his body was several times bigger than the previous human slave. But compared with the ferocious giant dog, this human still seemed a little fragile. So, most of the audience bet on the vicious dog to win the final victory without hesitation, and they didn't care about the life and death of the human man at all. After years of hearing and seeing, these aliens naturally believed that humans were just the lowest end of the food chain and were ants that would be abandoned by the time sooner or later. Under the gaze of many indifferent and laughing eyes, the human man stood expressionlessly in front of the iron fence. Under the sunlight, his muscular lines were clearly visible, and his deep eyes on his forehead were piercing. The various hideous scars on his chest showed how thrilling the battles this human warrior had experienced. Amid the noise of a foreign race, the orc who was in charge of betting also walked in front of Miu and the others. You two have to place a bet, one blue magic crystal can get 100 times the return. The orc held a steel basin in his hand, and his voice was shrill and very bewitching, making people hear it like the whisper of a devil. Bet. Miu under the hood found this quite interesting, took out a blue crystal core stained with blood from his pocket, and looked at the trapped beast battlefield below with a deep meaning. Just as he was about to throw the crystal core in his hand into the steel basin that was divided into 2 halves below, he was suddenly pulled by the beast-eared girl beside him. Chi Xiao held Miu's arm and whispered in his ear. Choose someone. This time it was Miu's turn to look at the little girl with a bit of surprise. It was not difficult to see that the human was an alien, but the little girl in front of him could detect the difference in strength between him and the giant dog, which was not simple. Miu threw the blue crystal core in his hand into the iron basin betting on the victory of the human. Compared with the situation on the other side symbolizing the victory of the giant dog, the number of bets on the victory of the human was pitifully small, with only a few crystal cores in the iron basin. Miu turned his head and looked at the little girl beside him meaningfully, and smiled. Why do you want me to bet on that human? Qi Xiaoxiao also realized that she had said something she shouldn't have said, and quickly waved her hands, explaining incoherently. I was just talking casually, thinking that human looked very, very brave. Brother, if you don't like it, just change it back. In fact, I also think that it is impossible for a human to defeat that giant dog. Tianlai Novel Network. Looking at the girl who waved her hands repeatedly and her expression turned into oh, Mu Qiu did not expose her, but just smiled and nodded. So that's the case. Qi Xiaoxiao smiled flatteringly at first, then sat upright and breathed a sigh of relief. Just as Qi Xiaoxiao was secretly rejoicing, the battle in the Colosseum below had already begun. A low horn sounded in the sky, and the attention of the whole audience was also shifted to the two figures in the Colosseum at this moment. Thousands of eyes stared at the giant dog and the human man. There was excitement, expectation, and desire for killing in these eyes, but there was no sympathy or mercy. Roar! The giant dog howled to the sky, its bloody mouth opened as wide as it could, and rushed towards the man at an unimaginable speed. The eyes of the whole audience were looking forward to the brutal slaughter in the next second, and the blood in the air stimulated everyone's senses. Unexpectedly, the human man named Iron Arm Slave stood there in a daze as if he was scared silly. At the moment when the giant dog pounced, a beam of light suddenly flashed in the human man's eyes. The muscles of the whole body suddenly tightened at this moment, and his arms turned into a piece of iron blue. In the next second, the man let out a loud shout and actually pounced in the direction of the giant dog. The man stretched out his iron arm to block in front of him, holding the giant dog's bloody mouth, and his sturdy body had already knocked the giant dog down. The giant dog bit the man's flesh and blood frantically, but the sharp teeth couldn't break the man's arm that had turned into steel. The man rolled to the ground with the giant dog, one hand against the dog's mouth, and the other iron fist madly beat the dog's head. Even though the sharp claws broke his chest and the wound was so deep that the bone could be seen, the man still hammered the dog's head without changing his expression. In less than a moment, the huge dog had been beaten silent by the iron fist and stopped struggling. A large pool of blood spread along the ground, and the dog's head had been beaten to a bloody mess, sticking to the ground. This scene instantly shocked the onlookers, who did not expect the battle to end in this way. This human alien has such high magic power. Qi Xiaoxiao, who was sitting in the front row, was also shocked by the bloody battle. Looking at the human man, he murmured to himself. Hearing Qi Xiaoxiao's self-talk, Mu Qiu also looked at the field with a bit of thought in his eyes. In the world 1,000 years later, the energy that brings powerful power to the awakened is called magic energy, and even the energy crystal core is changed to magic crystal. It seems that the combat system of this world will no longer continue the old system in the end of the world, but Mu Qiu does not know more details. In the Colosseum, under the silent gaze, the human man known as the Iron Arm Slave slowly stood up. The hideous wound on his chest was still bleeding, but the man looked around without changing his expression, and his eyes with murderous intent were extremely sharp. Being stared at by these eyes, many spectators present could not help but feel a hair in their hearts. Some aliens directly cursed at the man, and some nobles who lost the bet were even more furious and hated. Thinking that after today's game is over, I will buy this human slave and take him back to torture him to relieve my hatred. However, just when the atmosphere of the scene became particularly depressing, a sudden change occurred in the Colosseum. A melodious whistle sounded in the back row of the audience, and a series of explosions suddenly sounded around the Colosseum. Start the action! A loud shout came from somewhere, and countless figures stood up from the audience and ran straight towards the Colosseum below. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 522. With the sudden appearance of these figures, the scene suddenly became chaotic, and the aliens sitting in the audience hurriedly fled. At this time, an orc recognized the figure who suddenly attacked and shouted. "It's a human, an attack by aliens and human organizations. But in a flash, the orc who screamed was pierced through the chest by a sharp long knife and fell to the ground powerlessly. A human man drew out the bloody blade and rushed down without stopping. The sudden attack on the Colosseum was none other than the human race that they regarded as slaves on weekdays. A large number of human races rushed out from the back row of the audience and assassinated the aliens beside them. The arrogant and domineering aliens on weekdays lost their previous arrogance at this moment, and fled in panic. Most of the aliens here are ordinary residents in the town. At most, they are stronger than ordinary humans, and some of them rarely participate in battles. If you really encounter these murderous human aliens, you may not be able to defeat them. The guards in the Colosseum were quickly summoned to resist the sudden rush of humans. Some aliens who were confident of their strength also followed the guards to resist the attacks of the human race, and the scene became extremely chaotic. Boom! At this moment, a huge force suddenly broke a big hole in the walls on both sides of the Colosseum. Another group of humans rushed out of the hole, holding various magic weapons in their hands, and attacked the many aliens in the Colosseum. What's going on? Where are these humans from? Untouchables, are these untouchables going to rebel? Where are the city guards? Go and notify the city guards to come to reinforce. The aliens present did not know why the humans who were usually regarded as slaves by them suddenly rebelled. And the strength of this group of humans was far beyond their imagination. Countless energy fluctuations burst out in succession in the field. Although the energy contained in them varies in size, the energy level emitted by these humans is only higher than theirs. In addition, some humans are mediocre in strength, and there are ordinary people without any superpowers, but they hold various forms of magic weapons in their hands. With the blessing of magic weapons, even ordinary humans have the strength to fight against aliens. A new round of war in the Colosseum has started again, but the protagonists of this battle are no longer beasts and slaves, but aliens and humans. Big brother, are we just sitting here and not running away? Chi Xiao turned her head stiffly. The audience next to her had already hurriedly fled around, only she and Mu Qiu were still sitting there as if nothing had happened. At this moment, Chi Xiao felt the strong blood in the air, and her forehead was already covered with fine cold sweat, as if sitting on pins and needles. But Mu Qiu said half-jokingly, "No hurry, we can see a performance several times more exciting than others for the same price. Isn't it a good deal? It's just a pity. It seems that we can't get back our bet this time." Mu Qiu looked at the host and referee who were beheaded by humans on the high platform, and shook his head with some regret. In the Colosseum below, a woman wearing a windbreaker and short red hair jumped into the air, and a powerful energy wave burst out of her body. She waved her hands, and two burning flames burst out from her palms, instantly defeating and killing the two orc guards in front. The woman's eyes were sharp, and she rushed to the sturdy man who had fought with the vicious dog before with several companions beside her. "Baron, how is the situation?" The sturdy man shouted loudly, regardless of the injury on his chest, and his muscles bulged, and his arms also showed a blue iron color. With a crackling sound, the thick iron chains that bound his limbs were actually torn off by him. The man called Baron broke free from his restraints, turned around and said to his companions, "There are still a group of our people behind the iron bars, we have to rescue them." At this moment, more and more orc guards poured in from outside the wall and surrounded them. Seeing this, several people used their superpowers, and powerful energy fluctuations raged on the battlefield, and soon they killed their way out. A large piece of fire burned in the hands of the red-haired woman, directly igniting the road ahead. The flesh and blood of the orc guards were instantly burned by the flames wherever they passed, and they fell to the ground and struggled in pain. Leading her companions to kill their way out, the red-haired woman inadvertently glanced at the audience seats in the front row. But this glance made the woman's figure stagnate, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. "I saw two figures, one tall and one short, sitting upright in the front row of seats. The shorter one was a girl with animal ears, sitting there looking at the ruined battlefield around her anxiously. The taller one was wearing a black robe, his face hidden under the hood. As the breeze blew, the hood was also lifted, revealing a handsome man's face. Is this a human? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 523. As the battle between humans and aliens became more intense, the entire Colosseum turned into a purgatory on Earth. The corpses of various alien races were mixed with human limbs, and the huge Colosseum was filled with a strong smell of blood. Many foreigners who came to watch the battle fled in panic under the pursuit of humans, wailing endlessly. The human beings who were usually regarded as slaves and untouchables by them turned into butchers who harvested lives at this moment, and started massacring the surrounding aliens as if to vent their anger. In fact, most of these humans are ordinary people with no special powers, but they are different from those slaves. These humans were armed with magic weapons, and their attacks were extremely severe. They had obviously received some kind of professional training. In addition, their number far exceeded imagination, and a large number of alien races were under siege by many humans. The center of the Colosseum was already a river of blood, with corpses everywhere. The rescued strongman Baron and his companions broke through the iron bars behind them and rescued the human compatriots inside. Alien, go quickly. Hearing the shouts from her companions behind her, the red-haired woman fired 2 hot fireballs with her hands. A row of orc guards in front were hit by the flames, and their bodies burned and rolled to the ground and struggled. Within a few breaths, the guards guarding the Colosseum had turned into charred corpses. The red-haired woman stood bravely in the middle of the flames, protecting her companions behind her. Every time she threw flames with her hands, she would disinfect all the surrounding guards. But even so, the look of surprise on the red-haired woman's face never faded. The person sitting in the front row of the audience just casually, was that a human man? In the distant auditorium, Miu watched the wonderful battle below without changing her expression. It seems that the muscular man is a companion of this group of humans, and the large-scale terrorist attack organized by these humans is precisely to rescue this man. Speaking of which, the overall strength of this battle is actually generally low. These guards from the Colosseum are generally at the B-level, and even the A-level ones are very few. On the other hand, on the human side, the strength is even more mediocre, and most of them are even ordinary people without special powers. They can barely compete with the aliens by relying on the magic soldiers in their hands. But Miu suddenly looked at the red-haired woman surrounded by flames in the Colosseum ahead. Does it have fire powers? Miu immediately noticed that the other party was the strongest among them all, and the energy fluctuations in his body were a bit unstable, as if he had just broken through to S level. This world has developed for thousands of years, and it was unexpected that Miu would meet an awakened person of the elemental system so soon. In the apocalypse, even if you search the entire city, it may be difficult to see the existence of an elemental system. If it had been in the past, Miu would have devoured the other party's superpowers and adopted them as his own. But now Miu has been promoted to the principal source level, and after devouring the power of the 8 sources of creation, he is no longer interested in this kind of barren energy. Brother, why don't we leave now? Qi Xiaoxiao, who was beside Miu, was already a little restless, looking around with lively eyes. The aliens who tried to escape in the distance had all died under human butchers' knives, which made the little girl's mood suddenly fall to the bottom. Tianlai Novel Network. Her petite body subconsciously moved closer to Miu. Compared with these murderous humans, the mysterious Miu beside her could bring her a sense of security. Miu shook her head, stood up and prepared to leave. There is nothing new here that can bring him any sense of novelty. Such novices pecking each other is not interesting. Miu was not interested in where this group of humans came from and what their purpose was. However, the moment Miu stood up, she seemed to notice something and looked up at the sky in front of her. A smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. Things seemed to be getting a little interesting. The battle in the Colosseum was gradually coming to an end. After all, these temporarily recruited guards were no match for these well-prepared humans. The latter was also preparing to evacuate the place quickly after rescuing his companions. The strong man Baron stood in front of the wall, his arms turned into blue-black steel and covered with mottled blood. The corpses under his feet had piled up into a mountain. He was urging his companions to evacuate quickly. But at this moment, a human scream suddenly came from the high platform in the distance. He suddenly looked forward and saw that the humans fighting with the aliens on the platform were all pierced by black spears at this moment, and fell to the ground miserably like a hornet's nest. Immediately afterwards, a large shadow shrouded the entire Colosseum like a dark cloud. Some people looked up subconsciously, but at this sight there was an exclamation of surprise. I saw countless birds and beasts hovering over the Colosseum at this moment. Orcs with beaks and human bodies, wild geese and eagles flying high, and various types of huge mosquitoes. Some orcs were wearing armor and holding shields. Together with those huge birds and beasts, they looked like divine soldiers descending from the sky. It is these densely packed figures covering one another, directly blocking the sky. The leader of this army of birds and beasts is a humanoid locust with an upright body. There are two pairs of long and narrow wings behind it, and its front feet are like a pair of wide sickles. Its body is covered with thick armor, and it is very powerful. When the crowd below saw the appearance of the bird and beast army led by the armored locust, they immediately exploded. It is the flying locust demon general, one of the three great demon generals of the northern desert, and his bird and beast demon army. How could the demon generals under the northern desert lord appear here? Those humans seemed to recognize the identity of these orc armies and spoke in panic. The appearance of this group of bird and beast armies completely disrupted their original plan. However, the fact is that with the participation of the bird and beast army covering the sky, the situation of the entire battle has also undergone a drastic reversal. Countless flying birds and beasts flew through the sky and launched a fierce attack on the humans below. The humans who passed by were either torn to pieces by the claws of the eagles or pierced by the spears thrown by the flying orcs. And the strength of these orc armies is obviously several levels higher than the guards of the Colosseum, far beyond the ability of these ordinary humans on the ground to fight. But in just a short moment, the human side has suffered a large number of casualties. But it was not until the giant locust in heavy armor in the sky died that the human side felt the ultimate despair. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 524. The huge flying locust's forelimbs looked like two huge sickles, and the blades were still flashing with a cold light. When this figure descended into the air, a suffocating and terrifying murderous aura filled the whole place. The flying locust demon general said nothing, and his deep pupils could not even see any extra expression. He directly launched a massacre against the surrounding humans. Wherever the two sickles passed, there were pieces of broken limbs and flesh, just like mowing grass and easily harvesting human lives. Many humans swung their magic soldiers to chop at the heavy armor, but except for the sound of metal clashing, the flying locust demon general was actually unharmed. The two pairs of thin wings behind him vibrated, and the surrounding humans often only heard a buzzing sound in their ears, and the next second their heads and bodies were separated, and they died on the spot. In a short moment, the armor of the flying locust demon general was covered with human blood. At the critical moment, a woman's cry suddenly came from the air. The red-haired woman named Aliane leaped into the air, her fists clenched into sandbags, and two balls of scorching flames burst out, instantly hitting the locust demon's chest. A violent wave of fire spread out, and all the humans around felt the scorching breath carried by this wave of air. A faint light flashed in the pupils of the locust demon, and the hideous mouthparts were embedded on his face like a mask. He looked down at the armor on his chest that was burned black by the flames, and there were faint traces of cracks. He made a low voice. "Human, the strength is good. But, it's still a little short of the fire." As soon as the voice fell, 2 huge sickles had already chopped towards the red-haired woman's head. Alien's face showed a touch of shock, and the flames gushed out from under her body. The whole person had already retreated hundreds of meters away. The ground under Alien's feet had been chopped into 2 deep cracks. In the distance, Alien, who had stabilized her body, was panting heavily, feeling the gradually chaotic magic power in her body. Through the short fight just now, she already knew that she was definitely not the opponent of the monster in front of her. After all, the opponent was a real demon general. "Alien, hurry up, leave here first," the companions around her urged Alien to flee quickly. The current situation has exceeded their imagination. Only by escaping in time can the casualties of this trip be minimized. Tianlai Novel Network. Alien knew the seriousness of the current situation and followed her companions to flee towards the broken wall. And more human figures gathered around the flying locust demon general, and they all besieged the flying locust demon general. They knew that they were weak and could not be the opponent of the demon general, but even so, they had to buy time for Alien and others to evacuate. Abandoning the car to save the general, they, the aliens, are the last hope of the human race. Seeking death. The flying locust demon general naturally saw the intentions of these humans, but did not chase Alien and others at the first time. The sickle on his front limbs turned into a meat grinder when he swung it, and the narrow and thin wings behind him vibrated. His body was so fast that it even produced an after-image. In an instant, the humans who came to besiege him had turned into a pile of corpses. An Alien and others who were originally going to escape from the broken wall were also blocked. A large number of orc troops poured in from all directions and surrounded the entire Colosseum. This group of orc troops were well equipped, wearing armor, and obviously received orthodox training. "Damn, it's the city guards, why did they arrive at this time?" The remaining humans in the Colosseum were desperate. First, the demon general led a large army and turned the situation around in an instant. Now even their retreat route was blocked by the city guards who came. It was really a situation where there was no way to retreat and there was no way to survive. Alien looked palely at the sky in the distance, which was covered by dark clouds. It was the locust demon general and his army of birds and beasts. As the highest combat force in this operation, she was weak at the moment because she had consumed too much magic energy. She had just broken through not long ago, and the unstable magic energy in her body was now exhausted. She slowly took out a magic crystal containing violent energy. She knew that if she rashly absorbed it and forcibly improved herself, there would be a great risk of backlash. But now they had no other way to go. Just as everyone was panicking, the flying locust demon general in the air flew into the air at this moment, and a strange energy fluctuation was brewing around him at this moment. I saw that the flying locust demon general's wings vibrated, and countless spears slowly condensed in front of him. With a swish, thousands of black spears shot out in unison. A large number of humans below were instantly pierced through the body by these spears and died on the spot. Even human beings with superpowers could hardly resist such a large number of arrow rain, and some humans with low superpowers also died under the rain of arrows. The scene suddenly became extremely quiet, with only the miserable sound of flesh and blood piercing and bodies falling to the ground. The flying locust demon general looked at his masterpiece below and seemed very satisfied, with bright red blood reflecting his pupils flashing blood. The surrounding orcs also cheered in admiration, as if victory was just around the corner. However, at this moment, the flying locust demon general suddenly found a strange figure in his field of vision. there was a strange man in a black robe standing in the front row of the audience. The man stood there as if he was stunned, with half of his face covered by a hood, making it difficult to see his face. Behind the man, there was a petite figure hiding, burying her head behind the man. Seeing that there were still fish that slipped through his large-scale attack, the locust demon general spewed out a lot of hot air from his mouth. The two pairs of thin wings behind him trembled, and a sky full of spears condensed in front of him again, but this time he set his target on the black-robed man below. At this moment, a ball of fire rushed from the air like a meteor, wrapped in a red-haired figure. It was Aliene. The boiling flames wrapped Aliene's whole body, and even the flames of anger flickered faintly between her pupils. She wanted to avenge her dead companions. However, what was unexpected was that the locust demon general, who had been fighting with everyone for a long time, still had some strength left. He swung the double-edged sickle at Aliene and chopped at her, while at the same time driving the sky full of spears to shoot down. With the sound of shua, the black spears hit like rain. On the other side, the flying locust demon general actually swung his sickle to break through Aliene's flames and attack the latter's body. Aliene could only dodge in a panic, but he couldn't keep up with the flying locust demon general's amazing speed, and gradually fell into a disadvantage. But suddenly, a burst of horrified exclamations came from all around. The flying locust demon general who suppressed Aliene glanced down, but this glance made his pupils jump wildly. I saw that the long spear he had just shot down was suspended in the air 6 feet in front of the black-robed figure, and couldn't move forward an inch. And the black-robed figure just stood there. The breeze blew up his hood, and a handsome face appeared in front of everyone. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 525. What? He actually took the blow from the flying locust demon general. Many humans and aliens present felt a little unbelievable. The long spears that were like a rain of arrows seemed to be tamed in front of the black-robed figure. Just when they were about to penetrate his body, they hovered around him and did not move forward an inch. Until now, everyone noticed that there was such a figure in the audience. The breeze from the desert blew past, sweeping the hood of the black-robed figure, revealing a handsome human face. The blow of the demon general, who was invincible in their eyes, was easily blocked by the human in front of them. In full view of the crowd, the corners of the mouth of the man in black robe slightly raised, and the thousands of spears surrounding his body were actually rebounded by an invisible force. Shua. The black spears shot out in all directions at a faster speed, and the alien army within a few miles was instantly pierced through the body by the dense rain of arrows, and died on the spot. Even the flying locust demon general who was fighting with Aliene in mid-air had to sway and dodge in panic when he saw the rain of spears and arrows shooting at him. At this time, the red-haired Aliene also exhausted the energy in his body and fell to the ground in mid-air. Looking around, the ground was full of bloody corpses pierced by black spears. Even the surviving humans and aliens at this moment fixed their eyes on the only black figure standing in the field. Is it him? Aliene staggered to his feet with the help of the wall, and was surprised to find that this person was the human he had just seen. Human. The flying locust demon general looked at the black-robed man below with a sharp gaze, and hot air was spewing from his ferocious mouth. Looking at Muchu's handsome face, as if he had thought of something, he suddenly took out a wanted order made of parchment. On the wanted list was a figure in a fluttering black robe, standing on a hill, with bloody corpses flowing like a river at his feet. His eyes were deep, and there was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. It's you. Looking at the face on the wanted list that was exactly the same as Muchu's, the flying locust demon general realized that this man was the murderer who slaughtered the Bamo mine. So you guys also did the Bamo mine. Looking at Muchu and the remaining humans below, the flying locust demon general seemed to have thought of something, and actually regarded Muchu as being with this group of humans. After figuring this out, the flying locust immediately turned his spearhead to Muchu, thinking that the other party was the leader of this group of humans, and immediately ordered his men to attack Mu. At this moment, the bird and beast army present and the city guards who came all turned their guns and rushed towards the black figure standing in the center of the Colosseum. Locked by countless cold murderous intentions, Mu just sighed lightly. He just came to see the excitement. Why do people always want to die? He stretched out his hand, his fingertips passed through the air, and dazzling arcs of electricity entangled his fingertips, and finally spread to the whole arm. The next second, his arm dropped to his chest, and his fingertips gently tapped in the air in front of him, like a drop of rain falling into the lake, splashing waves. Zi. In an instant, the golden arc of electricity spread like waves on the lake. Circles of fierce arcs spread around like an electric grid with Mu as the center. All the orcs touched by the arcs first stagnated, and then their bodies began to twitch violently. First, the body twitched violently and uncontrollably, and soon the orcs rushing around were electrocuted into charred corpses. Waves of screams echoed throughout the venue, and thousands of orcs quickly disintegrated in the blink of an eye. In an instant, the whole venue was silent, and you could hear a pin drop. Under the horrified gazes, Mu retracted his fingers and looked at the charred corpses lying on the ground around him. Some of the corpses even turned directly into a pool of flying ash. He shook his head with a little disappointment. It seemed that he still didn't have a thorough control over the power of thunder and lightning. Big brother, good, so powerful. The beast-eared girl fell to the ground at some point, mixed in the corpses on the ground, looking at Mu in front of her with a shocked look, her expression excited. This is more than just a thigh, it's simply a big golden pillar. The locust demon general in the sky was also shocked when he saw this, and his low tone was obviously surprised. Another elemental alien. The remaining human side reacted at this time, and with a command, they launched a breakout against the surrounding aliens. Take advantage of now, get rid of them. After a brief shock, Alien immediately shouted to her companions around her, wanting to escape from here, this is their last chance. In an instant, the remaining humans and the aliens fought again. At this time, the flying locust demon general swooped down towards Mu below, and two huge sickles flashed a sharp cold light in the air. He had already seen that the black-robed man below was the leader of this group of humans, and also the most powerful human among them. To catch a thief, he must first catch the leader. He must first eliminate the most difficult human. The flying locust demon general, wearing heavy armor, was so fast that he turned into a residual image in the air. The naked eye could only vaguely see a beam of black light passing through the air, directly hitting Mu's vitals. Seeing that the sharp blade was about to cut the throat in front of him, the flying locust demon general's eyes had already emerged with viciousness. The human body is so fragile. Even if they have powerful abilities, their vulnerable bodies are still their biggest weakness. Humans are still the lowest race after all. However, the next second, a scene he didn't expect happened. The human in front of him suddenly disappeared, and the sickle he swung down also missed at this moment. You are too slow. A magnetic voice came to his ears, like the whisper of a devil. The pupils of the flying locust demon general trembled, and a heart-wrenching pain came from his chest, and then this intense pain quickly spread to his limbs. Spitting out a large pool of blood from his mouth, he trembled and looked back, only to see that the man in black robes stood behind him at some point. A lightning spear condensed in his hand, instantly piercing his chest and abdomen. The armor he was proud of on weekdays was as weak as brittle paper. The flying locust demon general opened and closed his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but Mu didn't give the former a chance to speak. With a short scream, brilliant lightning raged in the air, and the flying locust demon general turned into a pile of dregs in an instant. Looking at the ashes flying in the wind, Mu shrugged helplessly. Originally, he wanted to try to leave a whole body, but he didn't control the fire well. Mu stood with his hands behind his back, slowly descended to the ground, looked around the tragic battlefield, turned his head to look in a certain direction, and chuckled. "Why are you still lying there? There's nothing interesting here." A petite figure suddenly crawled out from the charred corpses on the ground, trotting all the way to Muqiu's side, looking excited. The people on the ground were stunned when they saw this scene. The flying locust demon general, one of the three great demon generals of the northern desert, was actually killed by someone, in seconds. Under countless horrified eyes, Muqiu took the hand of the beast-eared girl and walked away leisurely in the direction of the exit of the Colosseum. During the whole process, no one dared to stop the other party, and they just let the two figures disappear from everyone's sight. At this time, the fierce battle in the Colosseum also came to an end. Thanks to Muqiu, the bird and beast army and the city guards who came to support basically died under the thunder and lightning net, and the remaining humans survived by luck. Alian and others stared at Muqiu's departing back in a daze. "I didn't expect that my human race would have such a strong man in the North Desert. It is obvious that the opponent's strength is far beyond their imagination to be able to kill a demon general so easily." Alian opened her mouth, as if she wanted to stop Muqiu and say something, but was stopped by Baron and others who came. "It's too late, leave here first." Baron's face looked a little anxious. After all, this is still the world of aliens. The many changes caused by this action have exceeded their imagination, and soon there will be alien armies coming in an endless stream. Seeing this, Alian could only give up. She glanced at Muqiu's departing back, and fled in the opposite direction along the broken wall with her companions. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 526. On the vast sand dunes, two figures, one tall and one short, were walking side by side. The beast-eared girl Qi Xiaoxiao walked carefully beside Muqiu, looking around from time to time, like a frightened bird. Qi Xiaoxiao breathed a sigh of relief until she saw the outline of the town behind her completely disappear from her sight. The fierce battle in the Colosseum alarmed the entire town. A steady stream of troops gathered in the direction of the Colosseum, but Muqiu and the other two actually walked out calmly as if nothing had happened. Muqiu, who was walking beside the girl, suddenly said, "Who is that locust demon? You seem to be very afraid of him." He noticed that the little girl's reaction was quite abnormal since the so-called locust demon came. She no longer tried to escape, but instead rushed into the pile of corpses as if she was afraid of being seen, and dared not make a sound. Hearing Muqiu expose her, Qi Xiaoxiao's delicate body trembled violently like a frightened rabbit, and she hurriedly explained. "Big brother, what are you talking about? The flying locust demon general is one of the three great demon generals in the northern desert. He is very powerful. It is normal for me to be afraid." The three great demon generals in the northern desert. Yes, Qi Xiaoxiao nodded, and then said. The 12 lords of the Night Owls guard the 12 territories of the Eternal Night Dynasty respectively. These 12 territories are divided into countless territories by the lords of the Owls. Each lord of the Owls sends his lords to take charge of different territories. We are now in the northern desert controlled by the lord of the desert city. And the flying locust demon general is one of the confidants of the lord of the desert city. He is in charge of the army of birds and beasts and is notorious in the northern desert. After hearing Qi Xiaoxiao's explanation, Muqiu finally understood the class division of this 1,000 years later. In short, under the demon lord are the 12 night owls, and each lord of the owls controls several lords. Is the demon general very powerful? Muqiu looked at the girl with a look of fear, and recalled the fragile little bug that he killed casually, and was quite puzzled. It seems that the other party is at best an S-level awakener, right? Thinking of this, Miu couldn't help but ask about the level division of this era. After 1,000 years, the supernatural powers in the past apocalypse are called magic power here, and even the levels have a little difference. What surprised Miu was that this world actually linked the level of energy with status. Here, the strength of the major ethnic groups is divided according to magic power, from the first level of magic power to the 9th level of magic power. For example, the locust that was killed by Miu before was at the 9th level of magic power, and the latter was also called a demon general by the world. And above the demon general of the 9th level of magic power, there are the lord level that controls a territory and the owl king level that suppresses the 12 territories. Hearing this, Miu couldn't help but sigh that this place is indeed different from the world he knows. A demon general is an S-class warrior, so wouldn't the lord of that area have reached the destruction level? It seems that after 1,000 years, there is still progress in the times. If it were in the end of the world, there might not be a destruction class warrior in a small or medium-sized base, but here they can only become the subordinates of the Owl King. As for the so-called Owl King level, although not all of them are extraordinary, Miu guessed that they should be at least at the level of half-step De Yuan. While Miu was thinking secretly, Qi Xiaoxiao was secretly looking at Miu's figure. Her smart eyes turned slightly, and the little girl's eyes were eager. Suddenly she smiled sweetly. Even such a powerful locust demon general was easily killed by Big Brother. I guess Big Brother must be a strong man who has never appeared in the human race. Hearing the compliment in the girl's words, Miu just smiled and did not comment. Who knew that seeing Miu's reaction, Qi Xiaoxiao's heart sank immediately. In the girl's heart, Miu was already considered a strong man of the same level as the Lord. Recalling her experience and purpose, the girl pursed her lips, suddenly walked forward quickly, and bowed deeply to Miu. Big Brother, please accept me as your disciple. As if she felt that she had not done it thoroughly enough, Qi Xiaoxiao actually knelt on the ground after bowing, with a sincere and pious look in her eyes. Looking at the girl's abnormal appearance, Miu did not show any surprise. He just shrugged lightly, rubbed the girl's head, and shook his head. It's not that easy to be my disciple. So far, he has only accepted 3 disciples. In addition to the fallen Lin Feng, Su Wen became a beast king after entering the 6 reincarnations, dominating the southern border and commanding all beasts. And Shueqianya inherited Miu's position as the demon lord, became an emperor, and suppressed all races. His disciples are all peerless strong men. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 527. Shortly after Miu and the others left, all the humans who launched a raid on the Colosseum also evacuated. After a while, the city guards who came for reinforcements saw the miserable scene in the Colosseum, and everyone's face was full of horror. The Colosseum in front of them has simply become a bloody slaughterhouse. The ground is full of piles of corpses and flesh, and the blood that has not yet dried up has gathered into a river in the venue. Broken limbs and broken arms, flesh and blood flying everywhere, they could even clearly see the residual panic and fear on the faces of some dead bodies. How is it possible, even the locust demon general? The city guards were a little unbelievable. The locust demon general, who was famous in the northern desert and considered invincible in their hearts, actually died in this battle. Soon, the city guards, who had regained their composure, began to clean up the remnants of the Colosseum that had turned into purgatory. The corpses of various alien races were dragged and thrown onto the trailer, and some human corpses were burned directly on the spot. At this moment, a sudden gust of wind suddenly rose in the sky, and large clouds rolled down, accompanied by a terrifying breath of magic energy. Everyone looked up in panic, and suddenly discovered that there were cavalry figures riding strange beasts appearing in the sky. Although this cavalry army only has a size of 100 people, in terms of momentum and sense of oppression, it is even more powerful than the previous locust demon general and his party. The figure at the head was riding a huge eagle beast, wearing armor, with a human face, but with a pair of dark red horns on its head, with an upright waist and an arrogant face. Under the frightened eyes of everyone, the man descended on the eagle beast, followed closely by his subordinates. "Greetings, welcome to His Highness the Crown Prince." The captain of the city guard seemed to recognize the identity of the man in front of him, and quickly led a group of subordinates to kneel down to greet him. The man known as the Crown Prince nodded slightly, said nothing, took a cursory look at the tragic situation in the Colosseum, and just asked, "Who did it?" The captain of the city guard quickly replied, "Yes, it was a group of humans. They suddenly attacked the Colosseum. Even Lord Migratory Locust was killed by those humans." The captain of the city guard's voice was trembling when he told the story, and his eyes were filled with fear. If a demon general dies here, then he must also bear the unshirkable responsibility. But after listening to the narration of the captain of the city guard, the arrogant prince didn't have the slightest expression on his face. He just murmured lightly, "Tianlai Novel Network. Are they those fire humans again? It's time for this lowly race to be rectified." After saying that, he turned around and looked at the blood stains of corpses all over the ground, and said indifferently, "Get this place cleaned up as soon as possible." There was an inherent contempt in his eyes. Not to mention those lowly human races, even the alien races below are insignificant creatures in his eyes, and they will die if they die. In this world, strength and bloodline determine everything after all. Whoosh! Controlling the eagle beast under him, the man soared into the sky. The man looked at the distant sky with deep eyes and said leisurely, "You can't escape. What yes Kong, want will never escape my grasp." After saying that, he left towards the distance without looking back. As the man led his cavalry away, many city guards on the ground knelt down and said respectfully, "Congratulations to His Highness the Crown Prince." Since the explosion of mutated energy thousands of years ago, the entire world has also experienced a change that lasted for decades. Countless weak creatures perished in this cataclysm called the Doomsday, leaving behind only powerful species that have experienced the baptism of supernatural powers. Not only have all the creatures of all races evolved to a certain extent, but even the topography of the entire world has been affected. Various mutated plants began to grow crazily under the influence of supernatural energy. Vines and flowers began to grow on the originally bare sand, and a piece of land rose from the rough sea. Even the territory of the land expanded a lot. For example, Muchu is now in an oasis in the desert. It is said to be an oasis, but to ordinary people it looks more like a large forest. The towering plants stood erect and the dense vines grew wildly. Suddenly, I thought I was in some primitive jungle. Muchu was seen lying flat on a lawn, with one hand behind her head and the other hand playing with a strange-shaped long knife. This long knife has a ferocious appearance, a sharp blade, and a gem-like blue crystal core inlaid on the handle. The blade actually releases a steady stream of energy fluctuations. This is a so-called demon weapon that Muchu asked Qi Xiao for. The first time he took advantage of it, he recognized that the long knife was made from the bones of some kind of alien beast and energy crystal nuclei, and it seemed to be mixed with some special ores. Because it contains magic energy, even a 3-year-old child can wield it with extraordinary power, and it is even more powerful in the hands of people of equal strength. Muchu touched the smooth blade with one hand and murmured, "The forging technique is pretty good, but..." A gleam of light suddenly flashed in his eyes, and the fingers holding the blade of the sword exerted slight force. Click. The magic weapon that countless people coveted turned into dust in an instant. "It's still too weak." Muchu shook his head. Although the forging technology of this era has been generally improved, this magic weapon is still too fragile in Muchu's eyes. Not to mention the King's Night Sword, which is related to the fate of the entire Eternal Night royal family. Just take the demon sword Yan Mo in his Wuliang box. The latter is a supreme weapon forged by the top scientists of mankind with all their efforts, and it also has the potential to grow together with the Wuliang box. Not to mention that Mewtwo has injected countless blood and souls into it. The demon sword has long been beyond the existence of ordinary weapons. It is not an exaggeration to call it a divine weapon. It is definitely not comparable to any magic weapon of this era. Just as Mewtwo was thinking secretly, there was a rustling sound in the jungle beside him. But Mewtwo turned a blind eye to it until a petite figure rushed out of the dark jungle. Chi Xiao shook off the fallen leaves on her body and rushed out of the forest, holding a bunch of unknown fruits in her hands. Seeing Mewtwo lying on the lawn doing nothing, he said in surprise, "Master, I picked a lot of fruits from the forest." Mewtwo waved his hand and said casually, "Don't call me master, I can't afford it." Mewtwo is now allergic to the troublesome things like taking in disciples. One of the 3 disciples he taught volunteered to be a hero to save a city of humans and died in the end of the world. One broke into the 6 reincarnations, became the king of all beasts after being promoted to the half-step source level, and accidentally sent his master to 1,000 years later. Another one even annihilated all races, ended the end of the world, and became a female emperor. These disciples are more troublesome than the other, and Mewtwo has no time to take in another disciple. After receiving Mewtwo's negative answer, the girl first lowered her head in disappointment, and even the pair of animal ears on her head were broken. But then she seemed to think of something, and immediately cheered up, with a flame called fighting spirit flashing in her eyes. She believed that if she was sincere, her wish would come true, and she would be able to impress this peerless master in front of her with her true heart. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 528. The 2 of them came to this desert forest all the way. It was getting late, and when they looked up, they could vaguely see the looming full moon. Mewtwo was still leaning on the branch as if nothing had happened, while Chi Xiao below had already diligently set up a bonfire. After a while, a burst of smoke actually floated from the ground not far away. The whole process was carried out without complaint and never showed the slightest hint of dissatisfaction. This was one of the reasons why Mewtwo kept this little guy by his side along the way. Not only could he recognize the way, but he was also quite considerate in handling things, like a little servant, which saved Mewtwo a lot of trouble. Looking at the disgraced girl below who was infected by the bonfire, still working hard to fan the flames, Mewtwo chuckled and said, "You are quite attentive." Chi Xiao looked at the rising flames, slowly breathed a sigh of relief, and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Suddenly hearing Mewtwo's words, the girl did not conceal her purpose at all. She clenched her fists, her eyes seemed to be burning with fire, and said firmly, "Sincerity leads to gold and stone, as long as I persist, Master, you will definitely accept me as your disciple." The girl's expression was determined, but now Mewtwo was a little curious. The other party was wearing a precious space jade bracelet, and even the magic weapon handed to Mewtwo was not ordinary. In addition, as a foreigner, his family background is obviously unusual, so why would he want to become a disciple of a human like him? When Mewtwo asked this question, the girl's eyes showed a complicated look at first, and she spoke uncharacteristically. To become stronger. He slowly sat down by the bonfire, with his arms around his knees, as if Mewtwo had seen her for the first time, and told Mewtwo his story. It turns out that the girl was born into a wealthy family in the northern desert, and she has stood at the pinnacle that most people can't imagine since she was born. However, Chi Xiao's life experience is far from simple. Her father is a powerful high-level orc, but her mother is a pure human. In this world where bloodline equals status, human bloodline is the lowest, and Chi Xiao's mother is just a plaything of her father's whim. The bloodline gap caused Chi Xiao to be discriminated against by the entire family since he was born, and he was regarded as the scum and shame of the family. Her mother was even more bullied and suppressed by the main family, and was framed to death some time ago. Qi Xiaoxiao, on the other hand, was used by her father as a political tool to win over another large clan, and was forced to marry the young master of another large clan. In order to fight against his own fate and avenge his dead mother, Qi Xiaoxiao resolutely escaped from the control of his family, ran all the way, and finally met Mu Qiu. After hearing Qi Xiaoxiao's life experience, Mu Qiu smacked her mouth a few times in anticipation. It's a very old-fashioned story. In order to resist the fate arranged by her family, the girl evades her family's pursuit and finally meets herself. Logically speaking, she should be the opportunity given to her by God, teaching her martial arts and magic weapons, and finally making a shocking counterattack to wipe out the family power and reach the pinnacle of life. Unfortunately, Mu Qiu was not interested in any of these. He doesn't have the leisure to be a grandfather anymore, and he doesn't bother to witness a useless counterattack. Even if she becomes the new demon lord in the future, it has nothing to do with Mu Qiu. He has more important things to do. For example, go back to the end of the world and completely wipe out the heterogeneous religion, and then beat up that boy Ye Wuchen. The mobile phones, computers, and Mixui city are all gone. Look what he has done to his eternal night dynasty. Mu Qiu nodded slightly, very satisfied with her future arrangements, and looked down at the girl below. Then you may be disappointed. I have no plans to take on a disciple. You might as well look for other opportunities. But Qi Xiaoxiao shook his head and said in despair. My ability is quite special, others will not accept me. Oh? What is your ability? Qi Xiaoxiao raised his head, as if he had made up a lot of determination, and said solemnly. My ability is called Super Five Senses. It turns out that the reason why Qi Xiaoxiao escaped from the family was also related to her superpower. Her powers are extremely special and she is not good at fighting, but it enhances her five senses to the extreme. Vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch are all greatly enhanced. My five senses have been different from ordinary people since I was a child. As my magic power grows, I gradually find that my hearing and vision have reached a new level. She looked at Mu Qiu, and the complex emotions in her eyes were either sadness or melancholy. The ability given to me by hearing and vision is that I can hear other people's voices and see through my opponent's cards. Hear your heart. Mu Qiu felt a little surprised now. Isn't this the ability to read minds? Growing up, this ability to read minds has caused me a lot of trouble. I can clearly hear the voices of others, but this was also my biggest trouble. It wasn't until later that I had to turn off this ability. Falsehood, insults, disguises, this girl is used to hearing too much malice in this world. Mu Qiu said with a half smile. So you've also heard my thoughts? Qi Xiaoxiao shook his head. I have even heard your father's voice, but I can't hear your voice. Speaking of this, the girl's eyes showed fear. But when she tried to find out what Mu Qiu was thinking, what she heard was a roar like a dragon's roar. In that instant, Qi Xiaoxiao felt her brain go blank, as if it was about to explode. She believed without exaggeration that if she continued to find out, her soul would dissipate and she would die miserably on the spot. But it was precisely because of this that she followed Mu Qiu with confidence and enjoyed an unprecedented sense of security. Because she couldn't hear, Qi Xiaoxiao didn't have to consider whether the other party had ill intentions towards her, and she followed her inner choice and did things with peace of mind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 529. Mu Qiu looked at the beast-eared girl below, with a hint of evil interest in his eyes. Obviously, the girl's ability is not ordinary. Her extraordinary five senses give her the terrifying ability to predict the enemy's moves. Just relying on mind reading is enough to crush many talented teenagers of the same level. Think about it, before the battle begins, your opponent has already seen through your moves and attack directions. Isn't it that you have already lost to the opponent in terms of initiative? Of course, this ability must have certain limitations. For example, the difference in strength between Mewtwo and Chi Xiao is too great. If the latter dares to pry into his state of mind rashly, he will only end up with the soul scattered. And according to Chi Xiaoxiao's account, her ability has not been fully developed, and her 5 senses have only developed hearing and vision. If the other 3 senses will also develop new abilities as the magic power increases, it will be no less than one person with 5 abilities. Even in today's world, twin awakeners with 2 superpowers are extremely rare, but Chi Xiaoxiao has 5 superpowers. It's no wonder that Chi Xiaoxiao has the confidence to become a disciple. A freak with such talent like her will be amazed by ordinary strong people and accept them as disciples. Unfortunately, she met Mewtwo. Mewtwo looked at Chi Xiaoxiao and asked with interest. The ability brought to you by hearing is mind reading, so what is the ability of vision? Mewtwo is interested in understanding these strange abilities that he has never seen before. In fact, Mewtwo has already vaguely guessed the ability of vision in his heart. In the previous Colosseum, the girl had seen through the true strength of Baron and reminded Mewtwo to bet on the winning side. As expected, Chi Xiaoxiao explained. The ability that vision brings me is that I can see through the magic energy level in the target's body, and thus infer the opponent's true strength. Mewtwo asked seemingly nonchalantly. Have you ever used this ability to spy on me? Looking at Mewtwo's half-smile, Chi Xiaoxiao looked a little embarrassed, and hurriedly stood up, denying and defending. I tried to observe the magic energy in Master's body, but my ability is limited. I didn't see anything except a white door. As she spoke, the beast-eared girl's ears drooped, her hands behind her back, and she lowered her head, looking like she was waiting to be scolded. She didn't lie to Mewtwo, but her ability that worked all the time in the past didn't work at all with Mewtwo. She almost exhausted her soul, and looked eagerly, but what she saw was a dark and empty black hole, and the only light source was a white light door. But when Chi Xiaoxiao told what she saw, Mewtwo's expression suddenly changed, and a bloody light flashed in his eyes. What did you see? Chi Xiaoxiao had never seen Mewtwo so serious, and she stammered nervously. Yes, it was a particularly huge white light door, emitting a faint white halo in a dark space. Mewtwo's face was stern, and his figure turned into a ball of black flames in a flash, and appeared in front of the girl in the blink of an eye. He slowly stretched out his hand, and a white light door surrounded by clouds and mist appeared in his palm. Wisps of white clouds swirled around the light door, turning into giant python-like chains wrapped around the door, looking solemn and sacred. The white door in Mewtwo's palm was a miniature of the door of reincarnation. Is this the light gate you saw? Mewtwo narrowed his eyes and looked at the girl in front of him. After the latter nodded blankly, Mewtwo thought to himself that it was true. If someone was spying on him, he would definitely notice it, but the girl said that what she saw was a white door. There is only one possibility. What Chi Xiaoxiao spied on was not Mewtwo, but the door of reincarnation he held. Considering this, Mewtwo looked at the girl with a bit of surprise in his eyes. This girl in front of him can actually see the things of reincarnation. Chi Xiaoxiao stared at the white light door rising from Mewtwo's palm for a long time before hesitating and saying, "It's just that the door I saw is a little different from the one in your hand, Master." "Oh? What's the difference?" The girl stretched out a finger to her lips and tried to recall. The door was bound by 6 long shackles, and the color and length of each shackle were different. 6 shackles. After hearing what Chi Xiaoxiao said, Mewtwo seemed to have thought of something, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. A bold guess popped up in his mind. Could it be that these 6 shackles correspond to the 6 reincarnations? Once Su Wen told Mu Qiu that she was taken to the six paths by the mysterious man in white robes, and she did not return to her original world until 10 years later. Mu Qiu felt more and more that the key to traveling through time and space might be in these six shackles representing the six paths. Not noticing Mu Qiu's strangeness, Qi Xiaoxiao knocked her head and frowned. I only saw these, the rest is not clear. Mu Qiu looked at the innocent girl with deep eyes. Being able to see the six reincarnations, it seems that the girl's ability is far more than what it seems. He had a vague hunch that Qi Xiaoxiao's ability might be used to help him explore the mystery of the gate of reincarnation and find his way home. General, it's been confirmed that Lord Locust died at the hands of the humans who invaded Gotan City. Under the dark night sky, an orc knelt down on the edge of the cliff and said respectfully, "Can the migratory locusts be killed? Was it done by the humans from fire?" A tall figure appeared on the edge of the cliff, and through the moonlight, the outline of the armor he was wearing could be vaguely seen. "Humph, it's so embarrassing that a great demon general was killed by a group of humans." The figure that appeared from the edge of the cliff seemed to be extremely disdainful of the death of the locust demon general. "But it's time to deal with these untouchables. The Lord is extremely angry about the death of migratory locust." Another feminine voice came from behind the cliff, but it was more focused on the humans who launched the assault. Being able to kill locusts, it seems that the strength of those humans cannot be underestimated. I heard that the guards of the Bamo mine were also killed by humans who came from the fire. The armored figure let out a low cold snort, but a mere group of ants dare to shake a tree. "Fire? One day I will extinguish them all." The feminine voice continued. "Oh my, don't be so angry. His Majesty the Crown Prince has spoken, asking us to get rid of the fire-type humans as soon as possible." "Humph. The Lord hasn't spoken yet. How does he, an outsider, have the right to interfere in our affairs in the northern desert?" "Don't say that, I am a member of the Night Clan with noble blood." The feminine voice stopped abruptly, as if it had touched some unspeakable taboo, and hurriedly changed the subject. "Recently, those fire humans have been ready to take action. It seems that their long-planned plan is about to be implemented." The armored figure seemed to understand the meaning of the words. "You mean, from something like that? Hey, haven't these humans been coveting something like that for a long time? Then we can just give them this opportunity. In this way, we can not only get rid of the fire humans, but also get the legendary magic weapon. The Lord will be very happy." "That legendary magic weapon?" The tall armored figure's deep voice contained a bit of trembling, and he was extremely moved by the magic weapon he was talking about. "What do you want to do?" Under a dark cliff, a massacre plan against the entire northern desert human race is quietly being plotted. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 530. Boom. In the oasis forest in the desert, there was a sudden roar of a heavy object falling to the ground. I saw a huge giant bear being beheaded directly with a knife, and a giant tree behind it was chopped into 2 pieces. The sound of blood splattering was instantly covered by the loud noise of a giant tree falling down, and a green lawn was instantly soaked in blood. Vulnerable and vulnerable. A slightly crazy roar came from the opposite side, and a group of roughly dressed orcs were seen standing on the opposite side of the forest. The leader is a werewolf with a big knife on his shoulder. There is a long and narrow scar on his right eye. He has a ferocious face and a big grin. "What are you still waiting for? Go and get the crystal core for me." The long knife on the werewolf's shoulder was still bleeding. Despite the blood flowing to his back, the smile on Langshan's face became even more wild. With the magic weapon he bought from Monroe City in hand, he was not afraid at all even if he was an opponent 1 or 2 levels higher than him. The big sword on the shoulder is 2 meters long. The sword is inlaid with a blue crystal core, which exudes a fierce wave. Obviously, this is a blue quality magic weapon. Langshan and his brothers are specialized hunters who travel through various dangerous desert environments, hunting exotic beasts, seizing crystal cores, and collecting treasures. Occasionally, some gangsters will appear as guest characters, disinfecting and robbing the passing alien races. After finishing the order, they will go to the surrounding towns to eat and drink, which is quite leisurely and happy. The men beside him quickly took out a light yellow crystal core from the body of the giant bear, and the diamond-shaped gem was still stained with bloodshot threads. TCH, the magic power is only at level 5 or 6. I thought I could do a big business. Langshan threw up the crystal core in his hand, looking quite disappointed. Just when Langshan was about to lead a group of men deep into the forest, a whistling sound suddenly came from the jungle ahead. Langshan immediately became vigilant and ordered his subordinates to use their best tactics. Immediately afterwards, two figures, one large and one small, were seen walking out of the woods. Langshan took a closer look and saw that it was an exquisite-looking girl with animal ears, and his face immediately showed a look of surprise. Next to the girl was a human man wearing a black robe, holding a petite black cat in his arms. Human. This was the first time Langshan had seen this combination of a human man and a girl with animal ears. Langshan was stunned for a moment, but his vicious eyes immediately focused on the space jade bracelet on the girl's wrist. This is good stuff. Langshan's one eye lit up, and a look of greed immediately flashed in his eyes. In his opinion, isn't this a big deal sent by God? In his life, he traveled through the northern desert and killed countless people. He had encountered all nobles and nobles, but in the end, they could not escape his ruthless blades and sharp claws. As for offending the powerful, that is even more nonsense. In this desert where you can't see the edge, killing a few people and burying them on the spot is as difficult as finding the bodies, let alone finding him, a wandering wolf. On your body. The more he looked at the two figures in front of him, the more excited Langshan became. A cute girl with no power to bind a chicken, coupled with a human slave of low blood, is simply a gift from God to him. After killing them, bury their bodies under the tree, and then take off their valuables. It just so happens that Monroe City is going to hold a large-scale auction soon. If the space bracelet is sold at the auction, it will be really unproven. The auction house in Monroe City is the property of the Lord of Machen. I want to see who dares to go against the Lord. Langshan thought happily, and unconsciously looked at the girl with animal ears in front of him, thinking to himself. It just so happens that I haven't eaten meat for a while. Although I'm a little younger, I'm still young enough. There was undisguised lust in Langshan's eyes, but he didn't expect that the girl in front of him had noticed his performance. Through the mind-reading ability brought by hearing, Qi Xiaoxiao has already interpreted all Langshan's inner thoughts, and looked at the latter with obvious disgust in his eyes. Qi Xiaoxiao quietly conveyed Langshan's thoughts to Mu Qiu beside him. After hearing this, Mu Qiu thought for a moment. Auction. If I remember correctly, the next city they were going to was this Monroe. Brothers, another business is here, let's get started. The next second, Langshan shouldered the sword without hesitation and led a group of men to launch a fierce attack on Mu Qiu and the two. Even though the targets in front of him were seemingly weak humans and girls, years of experience still allowed Langshan to use his full strength. Seeing that the sword was about to fall, something unexpected happened to Langshan. The human man just slowly raised a finger, and a bolt of lightning flashed from his fingertip. The next moment, the man expressionlessly raised his fingertips and tapped them in front of him, and a beam of thunder and lightning penetrated the sky and shot out in the clear day. Kaka. Before Langshan and others could react, their bodies were instantly penetrated by terrifying lightning. The huge bodies turned into charcoal one after another, and finally turned into powder and scattered in the sky. At this point, the line of Langshan robbers who dominated the desert was cut off. Looking at the black scum in front of her, Mu Qiu shook her head in disappointment. I didn't control the heat well. Ignoring the admiring gaze of the girl beside him, he looked up at the sky ahead. Auction? Then let's go and take a look.